Hello, everyone. Welcome once again on the stage 3. Our next speaker is Mr. Zorin Radovančević, and he will let us know more about the topic Google Analytics in Yacht Charter. Enjoy the presentation.
Hi, everyone. So this is the third time, I believe, on this booking summit. And each time I have this kind of a difficulty when doing any kind of presentation because usually Miroslav is just before me. So that generally sucks because it's not a pleasant situation to be in because his presentation is basically what I have to measure afterwards. So whatever he's doing with the text, with the copy, with the experiments, with Google Ads and everything else, someone has to, let's say, wait for a month or so, see the results, and then say, did it make any sense to do this kind of an action or not? Now, this is most of my job. The other thing is I need to listen to Miroslav's humor, which is in some ways a bit difficult to manage on a daily basis, but it's, you get used to it, or better say you never get used to it, not till the end. But in any case, his point of, let's say, working is basically managing clients' budgets and making sure that the right people hear the right message at the right time and potentially buy that specific product or a service in the end, regardless of the country, regardless of the product price or whatever. But the point is, throughout time, we need to see if this kind of a, let's say, way of selling, way of promoting, way of communicating makes sense or not. In business terms, when we say makes sense, is it profitable or not? Can we continue working in this specific way, and what needs to be changed? And this is where analytics and, let's say, analytical tools get into play. Now, before, let's say, 2, 3, 5, 4 years ago, things were much, much easier. Why? Because there was probably not much consent present on the pages. There was no GDPR, at least it was not enforced in a way that it's currently at. And we didn't have those additional regulations like a privacy directive and things like that. But the most significant thing that happened is basically consent and lack of information, lack of data, let's say, because whatever we are now collecting in any way is much, much less than we did before. We have, let's say, the sum of data that we can collect with proper consent is much, much less than it's before. And it's not only analytics that's affected, it's also Google Ads. It's also Facebook Ads. It's probably any kind of advertising platform that you use is now seriously lacking the third-party information. And it sucks. It's basically for us as agencies, as marketing people, it's basically a very difficult situation to be in. Why? Because we like to think we rely on data, make decisions based on that. And that did not change, but the difficulty is how to obtain at least parts of it which are meaningful in, let's say, any case. My job in Escape, working alongside Miroslav, is basically to manage and evaluate current situation, predict the future, or let's say analyze the past for Miroslav's campaigns and the other 40 people which are in the company. And it's not easy, basically, especially when people like to have specific and explicit answers. Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? What can we change? What can we do better? And so on and so on. Nowadays, it's definitely difficult. So just the first question, and it's basically a very obvious one. You all have websites, basically, of any kind. Either you are an expo, or you are a charter, or whatever you are doing, but you all have some kind of a web presence. And you usually measure it. So a question would be, do you have any kind of a measurement tool implemented on your site? So just raise hands if the answer is yes. Any kind. It doesn't have to be Google Analytics. It can be anything. So, okay, that's a lower number than expected, but basically you need to track all of these things in order to make sense. Are we doing worse? Are we doing better? Are we doing anything, basically? And do we acquire users who are actually interested in a specific service or a product? So when we say measurement, it's not only Google Analytics. Facebook also measures the behavior of people that come to the site. If a Facebook pixel, let's say is present. RTB House, Sojourner, I don't know, TikTok can also be, let's say, implemented on your site. So the point is there are multiple of these things that are placed on the site, and they all communicate with third parties, with Google, with Meta, with any kind of a third party, and they then tell you some kind of a story. How much money did you spend, and who has seen or clicked on a specific ad. Not who in terms of name, surname, email, and things like that, but in terms of a segment, a group of people that did a specific action. Now, what's the, let's say, difficulty in all of this? The difficulty is consent. So let's say first-time user that comes to your site, they are not looking at the nice text that Miroslav is basically writing for you, so the copy is irrelevant. The first thing they usually see is that consent window. Do you consent to be tracked? And that's kind of a turn-off. I mean, there is a beautiful image behind, let's say, in the background, and then you need to reread some kind of a dummy little text. I consent to being tracked by Google, by Meta, by any kind of a vendor in order for, let's say, the website owner to perform better analysis, better marketing budget allocation, and so on and so on. So in easy terms, what do you think this kind of a consent is? A, is it necessary? And what does it actually do? So that's a question. Any volunteers? Come on. I mean, if you have websites, you usually have this kind of a consent window up. What does it actually mean? What does the user consent to? Sorry, wait, just a sec, please. And don't forget what you were starting to say.
You basically consent for the website to also know on which other websites you've been, and so what are your interests. So basically just to give you more informed advertisement and know if you're coming back, that kind of things.
Okay, on your site, and let's say someone else has, let's say, a similar site to you, should a consent window offer the same information?
Oh, no, I guess it depends on what you collect and what you want from them.
It's usually
what you're
different.
Doing, yeah.
Yeah, it usually is different. So let's say a person tries to buy something. Let's say something simple, shoes, washing machine, TV set, or something like that, and they usually go through multiple sites, multiple vendors. So it's consent number 1, consent number 2, consent number 3, 4, 5. You could usually say it when we had before banner blindness, so you are blind to advertising and everything else. Now you can be blind to consent, basically. So it's consent blindness. You just automatically click on the green button, which says accept all. And it's just basically measurement for all. You are giving away a lot of information to advertising platforms, which is great by us, which is great for advertisers, which is great for agencies, but it's not really great for the end user. It doesn't have to be dangerous. I mean, some of these things are not that dangerous. People say Meta uses this kind of information to determine who you are, who your friends are, what are you trying to buy, let's say, and we as advertisers use this information to target people. And that's basically, this is let's say the bargain inside this whole context, basically. You give consent, give us the information. We think you would like to buy or perform some kind of an action. And then we buy this information from these big vendors like Google, like Facebook, and so on. And it's hard to think that targeted advertising will even work without this kind of information. We'll go through some details about what we actually can do when we get out of the age of consent, basically. And we are probably going there. It's just a question of time. So when you do the consent first, then 5-10 minutes later, you'll basically run to so many more questions than answers. Because the consent itself is not only for cookies. Everyone's calling it cookie consent. It's not cookie consent, it's basically collecting, sharing information, and then using all of this information for a specific purpose. And that's the trick, basically. For each specific purpose, you need to ask for a specific consent. So there is a big difference when giving an email, when you do a transaction or any kind of a lead. There is a difference when you are applying for a newsletter. There is a difference when using email and sending it to Google Ads for some advanced features, basically there. So the thing with marketing technology, how it's used today, there is one additional cog, let's say, which needs to be solved, or let's say one additional puzzle, or one additional person that needs to be inside this whole process. So before you implement anything, Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, PVC, or whatever tool you want, what do you need to do first? What's the first step you're going to do? Perform. It's also a question. Yeah, you can say whatever you want. Okay, but in terms of a business, let's say I work in-house in, let's say, some kind of a charter company. And the point is, I have a great idea. Let's do Facebook and we need a pixel on the site. So I get to my, let's say, boss, and then I present this kind of an idea. The boss should answer it with a very simple and specific answer. What do we need to do first? Sorry? The targets are already in the operational stage. We didn't implement the pixel. We didn't start the Facebook campaign. We didn't do anything. This is just an idea. Let me help a bit. Let's even simplify it more a bit. We need to ask for a lawyer. We basically have to have some legal support in terms of we want to do this, and then the legal department or a third party, let's say, person who has a deep insight and know-how about tracking, marketing technologies, data protection, and everything else, you need to ask for a legal, let's say, consult. That's the first thing you need to do, because everything else will just be a consequence of the lawyer saying, yes, it's allowed, no, it's not allowed. And if allowed, what we need to do on the site with the implementation of a specific technology on site in order for us to be, what, compliant. So that's basically one of the buzzwords which is now present inside marketing technology, even Google Ads basically. So the initial question is, are you compliant? Because if you're not, you're, let's say, eligible. It's not for a prize, but it's probably for some kind of a fee, which either the government can give you, or let's say you wanna tax basically, or something like that. But in terms of having this kind of a legal person inside the whole process helps immensely, because technical people cannot answer the question if it's compliant, if it's legal, if it's anything to do with the law. You have a specific profession which answers these type of questions. So it's just a question of when are you going to be dealing with this kind of a problem. And we usually say this, it's possible, you can implement whatever you want, as long as the, let's say, a person inside your company which deals with legal affairs says it's fine. Then you can move on. So, and it's much easier to jump through hoops, burning hoops and everything else if you have good support for it. The crux for analytics and measurement and everything else is to, let's say, track, collect, and then analyze all of this data together, basically, and make sense of it, activate in some way. So the usual, this kind of a purchase funnel, regardless of the service, has its own touch points. It can be one touch point, it can be multiple touch points, it can be online plus offline, or online, offline, online, offline, and so on and so on. So the complexity in purchase funnels depends on the industry, price level of the product, let's say how many competitors are on the market, are they all offline or online, and so on and so on. So Google Analytics by its nature can follow through only parts of these touch points, not all of them. Offline is especially a tricky one. It's almost impossible to do, let's say, an explicit deterministic measurement. It's really not possible. There are other measurement, let's say, tools or practices which are used to do that, basically, like media mix modeling and things like that. So Google Analytics by itself does not answer this question. But a point is, if you, let's say, just look at the lower part of the image, these are mostly online interactions. With the advent of privacy and everything else, the number of these touch points are heavily reduced. So you cannot track all of them. Let's say for iOS devices, this is, it's not quite new basically, but in essence, if you do standardized tracking, you can track a person for 7 days. After 7 days, the operating system and the browsers are going to delete your cookies, basically, your first-party cookie generated by a third party. There were some, let's say, ideas or techniques which you can circumvent this kind of behavior for iOS, but it seems that in about a month or so, this is also not going to be possible. So for iOS users, Apple users basically, it's almost impossible to track them throughout a larger span of time. Why is this important basically for us? There is some kind of a persona built about iOS users, Apple users, because they are in a higher level of spending, let's say. On average, they could spend more. Why? Because on average, Apple devices are more expensive than the other ones. So that's the first thing, let's say, where we can say we want more Apple users, but the difficulty is we cannot track them through long periods of time. So that's the first part. The second part, some of the browsers, some of the users block any kind of tracking. Google Analytics tracking, Pivot tracking, whatever you want. We do not want to be tracked. So in order for everything to check out on a legal stance, we basically cannot track everyone. So data is completely missing. It's not like we can get it from some other source. No, we can't. We can basically just work with what we have. In statistics, is 20% of users, let's say like a random sample, enough or not? It depends. It also depends. If the group is random enough and everything, all of the groups inside are basically represented, so you have the whole representation of the group inside. So in that case, it could make sense. So let's say in your Google Analytics, whoever uses it, let's say the number is 100,000 users per month. How much do you trust that number? Is it a good number? Is it an accurate number? Is it a truthful number? Or what? It usually is not. It can be off by a lot, basically. If people who are usually visiting your site are, let's say, iOS users and something like that, there could be a lot of inflation of number of users per month, let's say. Why? Because they get back in a weekly cycle, and for Google Analytics or for a tool similar to that, there are usually a new person each week. And this produces, let's say, an inflated number of users for a specific time range. So the first advice and a fact, basically, when you're working with any kind of an analytics tool, you are not using, let's say, these kinds of numbers in terms of 100,000, because it's not an accurate measure of anything. You are using the comparison between two periods in terms of the relative relationship between these two numbers. You are measuring the direction, basically. If you are spending more, you expect to have more users. If you are spending less, or there is some kind of a market fluctuation which you expect is going to affect your numbers negatively, then these numbers are going to drop. And this is what you need to see inside your Google Analytics. So 20% up, 20% down, that's just fine. Working with, is it 100 or 80,000, then that really doesn't matter, because it's not a true representative of how many users you have on your site. And with these kinds of estimates, like even the relationship numbers which you have or calculated metrics inside, you can be smart as you were with the absolute numbers. You don't have to have this kind of an accurate number to be smart with Google Analytics. Also, machine learning can help you with this. It basically estimates the number of users which you have inside. But we will go through in more detail about that. So not everything is lost, basically. There are tools that, based on the sample, let's say, of 20, 30, 40, 50%, they can estimate the total numbers of, let's say, the complete picture of your site. How many people did you lose based on consent? How many accurate, let's say, information did you lose based on, let's say, errors in tracking or whatever prevention happens on site. And there is even a bit more, let's say, which is happening in the analytics space, is the communication between your first party, let's say collected emails or phone numbers from your users, which can then be exported to Google Analytics and to Google Ads specifically. Basically, for Google Analytics, it doesn't offer much features about it, but Google Ads can improve a lot. It's basically the number one thing that Google advertisers, the big agencies, are doing currently, and that's connecting first-party data or zero-party data with Google Ads. It works much, much smarter then. Okay, and then it's always a question, that you feel like a donkey, you feel like a horse, you don't know what actually you have to do, things get a bit complex, and there is actually no easy way around it. For us, the amount of time that we need to spend for implementation of a specific service now is about double. Because there is a lot more back and forth with the legal, with the agency, with developers and everything else. So it's not easier to do it, it's a bit harder to do it. Time-wise, complexity-wise, because you are touching upon one additional subject, and that's basically legal. And there is a lot more talk about control. This all happened. This is the Peugeot site in France, basically. This all happened because people were becoming greedy. Greedy in a way that we were sending loads of information to unknown areas, basically, and then everyone was for sale. For sale. Your data was for sale, your transactional information was for sale, your behavioral patterns were for sale, basically. And then people said enough. To be more specific, the European Union said enough, and then everything started to get a bit more under pressure. And this is all fine. So just to reiterate, the first part, this is now the implementation cycle of, let's say, Google Analytics, Google Ads, or whatever marketing technology tool you have in mind. So the first thing is business need. Do we actually need it? And by implementing, are we going to earn more? I mean, if we are not, there is absolutely no real reason to do it. I've seen examples that sites perform great even without Google Analytics or any kind of measurement tool. Why? Because their business is great, their idea is great. They advertise, they do some kind of measurement, but they do not implement these kinds of tool on their site. They said, we don't need it. Either they don't know how to use it, they think that it's expensive, or the added value of having such a tool on the site does not really matter. Then after the business need is taken care of, then you address the legal complexities, basically. Because it's not only Google Analytics, you have multiple tools which can offer basically the same or similar service. Not many, but there are some of these tools. And then the implementation part. The implementation part is almost the same. There are some kind of kinks, let's say, which you need to take care of, but it's the same cycle with this additional part. I mean, it was there before for serious implementations and everything else. Now everyone needs to do it. And everyone is under a scope, basically. And that's the issue. So the facts. Business still needs data. I would say some of the businesses still need data, at least the useful ones. And basically, there are technical and legal moves you need to make. Everything else is going to be inside the presentation, but these are the two main points. The point of, let's say, having the number of users throughout the month does not really generate revenue. It can give you a right direction where you're currently at, or how many new users you need, but it doesn't actually say, are you successful or not. Google in the mix. So this is something to take home, basically. So whoever advertises seriously, really seriously, and makes money out of, let's say, paid advertising and everything else, needs to take care of these four main things. Google Ads will not work without them anymore, or will underperform in any case. So the first part is Google Analytics 4. Why? Because it's, let's say, it's an upgraded product from Google Analytics Universal. Google Analytics Universal will stop processing data in, let's say, second half of next year, basically. You will not have access to your data anymore, and it will not be processed anymore. So whatever you have been doing in the last, let's say, 10 years, it will be lost. But don't cry over it, because things have shifted long ways inside these 10 years. Measurement is different, privacy is different, users are different, purchase behaviors are different, so you will not lose a lot by losing access to your old Google Analytics. I love the old Google Analytics. Why? Because I know it, because I can find the answer fast. I'm truly fast with the interface, with the reporting, know where everything is at. But the point is, we just need a bit more, let's say, migration time until we are comfortable inside the new interface. And everything will just continue running as usual. Nothing will dramatically, let's say, change. Google consent mode. So this is basically a product, a privacy product from Google, which enables you to track in a very anonymized way. So basically, once the person did not consent to any kind of tracking, you can still send anonymous pings to Google Ads and Google Analytics. This information is only used to do modeling. There are no ways you can retarget these people. You cannot identify these people. There is absolutely no cookies stored on user's device, and this is what Google has presented once they were confronted with the European Union directives and regulations. So is it legal or not? Again, I cannot say if it's legal or not. You need to ask your legal offices, basically, can you do it or not? But it gives you the ability to estimate basically how many actual people have been on the site. It does not give you the accurate number, but it gives you the, let's say, a more realistic number, what your traffic is generated inside a specific time range. Enhanced conversions, so this is number 3. It basically uses your first-party data. When I say first-party data, it's what you collected for your own purposes and stored it on your own end. Basically, it's a list of emails, a list of email addresses or whatever, but it's in a hashed format. So you cannot say miroslav@escapestudio.hr. It's probably going to be a string, which is a complete gibberish. A human cannot read it, basically. And there is only one specific purpose this is used for, and this is used for, in this case, enhanced conversions is for conversion reporting and conversion optimization. Google says it nicely. When implementing Google Enhanced Conversions, you will see some kind of an uplift of about 20 to 40% of conversions being displayed inside Google Ads. This, on a business side, definitely makes sense. On a legal side, it needs to be consulted with a lawyer, again, unfortunately, but this is how this should be done. So if we are talking about 20 to 40% conversion increase inside Google Ads, that does not mean that your balance sheet is going to increase by 20 to 40%. It just means that you are going to be able to explain where these conversions come from. So your decisions are going to be based on much more data than before. So if you want to be more certain and more informed about what's happening with your campaigns, with your content and everything else, enhanced conversions is the way to go. Smart bidding, that's basically the 4th part. It's not that new. It's not definitely that new. Smart bidding was, I don't know, a couple of years ago, even a decade ago, but in small increments was, let's say, like a prevalent way to bid on people. In this way, we are actually bidding on people and on search terms and not on keywords. Keywords are basically just sentiment area or something like that. It's a group of keywords now for Google, because we are not bidding on a specific keyword. We are bidding on specific interest, on specific group, on specific stage in where the person is currently at, and then basically just pushing whatever keyword we can find inside. What does smart bidding actually do? We don't care how much does a click cost. We care how much money we can spend to acquire a customer. This is what we tell the machine to do. So it's not saying to the machine, the maximum number that I'm willing to pay for a click is, let's say, €1. That doesn't make sense, because out of all of these €1 plus €1 and so on, maybe none of them will be customers. But in another, let's say, idea, what Google is basically presenting and offering us is the fact that we can pay for a specific conversion, or tell the machine that we are willing to pay for a conversion. When I say conversion, it can be a booking, it can be a lead, it can be any kind of a click on a site, and then we can measure it through time and optimize it, basically when we see which kind of a keyword or whatever is working for us. So when we say Google Analytics and Google Analytics 4, that's basically just a new version, nothing really truly changed. We track the same things. We track the same interactions that the users do perform on the site. And we'll see how it actually looks afterwards. But the point is, you, me, so in terms of an analytics consultant or a person who owns the site, needs to decide what is really worth tracking. Because through time, let's say you have an analytics account for 10 years. The site has changed, so different events, different interactions are possible. People change inside the company, so no one knows what's actually tracked. Because it usually boils down to no one has the document which says, okay, these are the events which we are following, these are the important ones, this is how we describe these interactions, and so on. These usually do not exist. So the point is, once you migrate to Google Analytics 4, the new version, just forget about everything else that you did before. Or let's say, just use what you have learned is the most important part of the transition and just implement it into the new version. So the biggest change is that there are no more page views, there are no more transactions, there are no more timings or things like that. There are only events. Inside Google Analytics 4, there are only events now. When I say events, these are basically interactions. So a user clicked on something, a user scrolled, a user viewed a video, a user made a purchase. These are all events, and each event has its own name. So you basically say, when a person sees a YouTube video, it will be shown as an event, basically, and it will say YouTube video. And then we have some additional things that we can describe all of these things with, which are custom dimensions, but we are going to describe it a bit later. But for, let's say, charter business and everything else, these are the main events which you need to track. Not more. If you are doing more, then something is probably wrong. Or you are currently testing something, or you have the need to do something, but you obviously didn't ask, why do we need this kind of a specific event to be tracked on the site? With this set of events, you are good to go. And it's probably going to be better than 90% of the booking charter sites or whatever you have, because some are doing less and some are doing more. Those who are doing less do not have enough information to decide, do not have the granularity to go deep inside. Ones who do more, they are probably going to get lost inside data because they are going to use a lot of time deciphering what the reports actually mean. So for a specific site, what you need to track is this. Anything else aside from that, this also applies to retail. This also applies to B2Bs. This also applies to anything. Just make sure that each of the stages in the purchase process on-site, once on-site, is tracked in a simple, easy to understand way. Once you have the entire process tracked, what you can do? You can track the success rate, like conversion rates and everything else, which is just fine. But what we actually want to see is where most of the people are either leaving the process or leaving the site. Screw success. Everyone can manage the success. You have success listed in your balance sheet. You have it on your, let's say, lead generation program. You read these emails. But what you cannot see there is how many people got lost in the funnel. How many exited the entire journey. How many people saw the product or a service which you offer, but didn't get to a specific part of the checkout process. Because these are the people you want to manage. These are the people you want to retarget in any kind of a way. Just come back. We have now a much better service, much better offer just for you. You can do it via email, you can do it via Google Ads, you can do it via Facebook Ads. It's just a matter of, we have the measurement, we know where we lose most of the people on the site, and this is the way how to track it and how to report it and how to activate it. Because without activation, this all doesn't have sense, have no sense at all. Meaning, if your Google Analytics is only used for reporting, in terms of after each month, you say, we spend this much money, we have this, let's say, number of users, we have this amount of leads, but if there is no specific action afterwards, meaning that the report contains based on this and this number, or let's say change in this number, we suggest that we need to either spend more, let's say, in the DACH region, or we need to lower spend in the Italian region, or whatever, but there needs to be some kind of an actionable thing afterwards. Nice to have things, screen views, image clicks, map clicks, or whatever. It's just to make sure that you have your site described. Map clicks, usually have to pay for Google Maps, let's say. Image clicks, you usually have to pay for image production, photographs, videos, and everything else. And then you want to have the very simple answer, are these items actually used? Is anyone clicking this large version of images? Is anyone starting the video itself? Maybe YouTube is for videos. Your site is not for videos. Why do you even host these videos on the site itself? It takes space. It takes the, let's say, the space on the site, which can be used for some other purpose, maybe a better purpose. So, in essence, this is what you need to follow. And when you say we need more, not more events, we need to describe the actual event which happened. So, for instance, this is from NCP, yeah, some of these here. This is a very simple search form, extremely simple search form. And this is like performing a poll. Not election poll, but basically what kind of a charter or what kind of a boat would you like to rent for a specific time period. Once each person does this, they give you their needs. You know what they need. You can actually store their need and use it to perform some kind of a, let's say, personalized advertising for them. Because if you store all of these informations, like type, model, number of cabins from to, you know where they want to go, what kind of a boat do they need, how many cabins do they need, and so on and so on. It can be even more granular. So this is just to start with. But if we say we want to track an event, someone has searched for a boat, when adding all of these informations, you can do trend through time. So in 2021, most of the people that searched on the site wanted only 2 cabins. Now in 2022, it's 4 cabins. So more people, basically. On average, the price is probably going to be higher and higher. We need more boats of this specific, let's say, size, and so on and so on. Now, when I said that we want to also track negative events, the worst thing that can happen with the search is what? If you have 0 search results. So I have a specific need, I perform a search, and then I get this, a 0. So A, you either don't have this kind of a thing that people need, and if this number of people accumulates through time, then we definitely have an issue with our, let's say, offer. Either we buy this kind of a, let's say, boat or a service, either we partner with someone who has this kind of a service, or either our advertising is so dumb that we get all of these people who come to the site, ask for a specific service which we know we don't have. So this is what everything 0 search results can actually say. And it's quite dangerous basically to have. The other part is the product view. So for us, basically product trending, product demand, what the users actually browse the most, demand the most, is one of the biggest signals that we track on a daily basis. In terms of detecting anomalies, is it something outside the obvious? Is it something outside the average, basically? We expect 100 users to, I don't know, who search for a specific sailboat. And then this number doubles inside, let's say, 1 or 2 days or 3 days. Something happened. And then the analyst, the marketing guy, the sales guy, the expo guy can explain why this happened and how can we use this kind of information further down the road. But in any case, this kind of a boat view, which is basically a product view, you can name it whatever you want, just describe it with the information which you want inside the reports. So the end report, which is going to look like for you, on our website, the most sought after boats, sought after models, sought after boat sizes are this and that. And through years, you can have basically a seasonality graph. You can check if the seasonality has changed in any case, but you will definitely be smarter, because without this information, it's definitely going to be hard to budget. So combining these two, internal information and what Miroslav has presented, Google Trends, Keyword Planner, and everything else, then this makes sense. So it's like a 3-part system. The market demands, on-site demand, on-site transactions, and then you can move on with deciding whatever you need. The main functions of Google Analytics did not change a lot. Nothing changed. It's a bit different inside the interface, but with Google Analytics, there are 3 main basically functions which Google Analytics performs. This is marketing attribution. So which kind of traffic acquisition where we spend money gets us number of users, number of conversions, number of something basically which happens on the site. So this didn't change, and Google Analytics 4 can perform all of this. So this didn't change. The second part is behavior analysis. Did this change? No. We still track people in terms of which items did they look at, which products did they look at, and so on and so on. But it's much more flexible. We can describe events with many, many more details, but we actually need to track less because it doesn't make sense to just track everything, because someone has to take care of it. If you track 100 events, then a developer or your reporting is going to have to check each day if this event is tracked or not. If you have 10 events, then it's much easier to do. Then the quality assurance and everything else is much, much easier to perform. And this is why the focus on just measuring the main things, it's definitely important. And then the third part, segmentation and activation, which is, to be honest, rarely used. Not a lot of Google Analytics users use segmentation, basically, just to create groups of users who perform in a different way. Pattern behavior, transactions, and everything else. But this is probably the most powerful function inside Google Analytics. To create segments, let's say motorboat segment and sailboat segment. These are two different types of queries. These are two different types of people. People like noise, people like silence. And this is what we actually want inside Google Analytics. With this segmentation, we can basically change our communication with the help of sentiment analysis or whatever we need, but we basically push this kind of a different communication to different target groups. This is why Google Analytics is basically extremely powerful. Why? Because it automatically integrates with Google Ads. This is the main selling point. Nothing else is that powerful as this direct integration with an advertising engine. So use it wisely, use it compliantly. That's basically what we need to think of. And for the end, comparing Google Analytics with Google Analytics 4 with the universal version, just don't do it, because it doesn't make sense. Nothing you are used to inside Google Analytics Universal, the old version, is going to be the same inside Google Analytics 4. The methods are the same. The basic principle of collecting is probably the same. There are quite a bit of nuances, but the whole idea is basically the same. Interface is completely different. Metrics have changed the way they are measured. They changed names and everything else. So for you to start with is basically just another learning curve. You need to start with it. You need to start playing with it. What's the actual thing with Google Analytics? As before, you cannot break it. You just go inside the reports and just try to learn as much as you can. Try to give yourself a task. Where can I find the number of users who have come from, let's say, Germany or from Italy? How many of these people have done a specific activity, like a conversion event, and so on and so on? With this kind of task to report, let's say, daily routine, you will be extremely fast with Google Analytics, regardless of the version, inside, let's say, 1 to 2 months. You will be extremely speedy. So the main questions that you have can be answered much, much faster. And this is probably going to be the close and also an invitation for tomorrow, because tomorrow we are going to deep dive inside Google Analytics for reports. So you can see what the upgrade on the reports is, and it's massive. It's basically massive. A whole interface which offers you a huge amount of improvements, basically. How you can visualize data, how you can see it, compare it, export it, and everything else. It's basically really massive. But it needs to get, you need to get used to it just. And that's basically it for today. If you have any questions, please do. But I think that this
Thank you, Zorin,
done.
very much. Thank you very much for your presentation once again. And we have one question from the audience on the live chat. So what is the best website you have ever seen?
The best website?
Yes.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
I would say Google, basically, but for it's not a biased thing, but based on the function that it needs to perform. It's a search engine. You have search input. That's basically what I think. It's a great website.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And do we have some questions from the audience? Please raise your hands. Okay, my colleague will come now. Thank you.
So thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. I believe you said GA4 is going to be released in 4 months. So what you're saying is that we should wait 4 months until using Google Analytics? 4? Should we wait until it comes out and get into that?
Once legal approves it, implement it as soon as possible.
All right, thanks.
There is no wait period because the amount of data that you collect with Universal is meaningless, basically, because it cannot be used afterwards. So
All right, thank you.
just migrate as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. I want to clarify something. You told us that on Google Analytics 4 you can create some segments that you can directly
Export.
on Google Ads, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.